Hey guys, it's Abi from Autumn of Pellinor, and today I'm going to be giving a review of The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is the third book that I have actually read from Samantha Shannon. I've read the first two books in her Bone Season series, but this is definitely the biggest, and it's also a standalone. We follow different points of view from different regions around this giant world that Samantha Shannon has created, and we see them all interacting and having their own different ways of life, and also that they don't exactly get along. But as you can guess from an epic high fantasy like this, something brings them together that they have to fight for. Have a wild guess. First off, I'm going to say that this was an absolute favourite. I adore this book. It is now one of my favourites of all time. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I would give it more if I could. I ended up wanting a lot more of this book, and I did struggle to get through it. If you guys have been watching my other videos, then you'll know that I have been reading this for a long time because I wasn't giving it enough pages per day. So if you do struggle with books this size with fantasy, I do recommend trying to waiting until you can and then setting aside like an hour every day to read from the book, because you will get a lot more engrossed and then it'll go by in like, well, for me, I could have read this in a week if I'd actually just sat down and read it, and that's with just like 1 hour a day, maybe a little bit more. But for those of you who are slower or faster readers, obviously you can alter that for yourselves. So, my favourite parts about this book. First off, this is a sapphic book, I believe. I don't know if I'm using that term right, but there's female-female romance in it. I'm not going to spoil who it is, I'm not going to even give any suggestions, but I will say that I loved it. It was really believable, it builds up in a really great way, and they really fit together. The two women are perfect for each other in a very realistic way. Like, they're not perfectly matched, but they do work so well together as a couple would in real life, and I really think it's really beautifully written, and those parts, I fell in love with the concept of the relationship. It was so beautiful. There were also, as far as I could tell, a lot of different races in the different points of view, so various different people of colour. I think obviously this is a fantasy world, but I think there were black point of views and Asian point of views as well as white point of views. To me, at least as a white woman, they felt very equal. Take that with a big grain of salt, I am white. But they did feel like there was an equal distribution of people of colour throughout this book, which I did really enjoy because it's more realistic, especially spanning an entire world. It was a lot more realistic, but as I said, grain of salt because I'm very white. The feminism in this book is amazing, but it's not shoved in your face. It's not out there shouting, women should have equal rights. It just does it. And it was really interesting to see how it challenged my internal bias towards women's place in society. You would think that as a woman, as a self-proclaimed feminist, that I wouldn't have these biases, but I do, and this made me re-encounter them. Just little things like you see someone in Queen's Royal Guards, it's all like gender neutral because they have a, like, you know, helmet and stuff on, and then she'll write she, and I'm like, I assumed that was a man. Another point, the equivalent in this world of a university lecturer of an old man. It was a woman. I just assumed that because it was an old person's lecturer, of course it was going to be a man. No, it was a woman. And also with the kind of more bandit side of it, again, I'm trying not to give any actual spoilers, but there are vagabonds. I don't know how the fuck to do this without spoiling it, man. It's difficult. But again, they would be fighting and there was no concessions made towards the women. Not all of the women were brilliant fighters, not all of the men were brilliant fighters, that was very much realistic, but there were no concessions made towards the fact that certain individuals were female. It was a case of get on with it, and I really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed that one of our main characters wasn't a strong fighter. She is very bad at fighting and is reasonably weak, but that didn't detriment her in any way, and that wasn't seen as a weakness. People were seen as equal whether they could fight or not, unless you were, you know, in these like fighting groups. That's kind of their thing. So yes, this did make me question a lot of my own internal biases, and it's kind of sad that I was surprised that women were portrayed as equal in this book, but it is something to note in my review. Sticking with the fact that it's got people from all over, I think all of the different places were fleshed out really well. I mean, this is only 800 and something pages. Yeah, it's just over 800 pages for the actual text. It's got a glossary and a list of the characters in the back as well, which adds to the page count. I felt whenever I was switching to different countries and different kind of diplomatic incidents, I actually understood all of the different countries' point of view. I felt like they were all really fleshed out, and I understood where all of them were coming from. I did have my preferences, I think it's supposed to be that way, who knows, but I did have the countries and the people that I preferred and that I wanted to win in these diplomatic arguments, but I did completely understand the arguments of those they were going against, those they were trying to make deals with, and that just, to me, shows that Samantha Shannon was able to really flesh this out incredibly well. I didn't feel like there was a region that I didn't know as much about. One of the key regions anyway. There are points of this book that I am so excited to learn more from if she ever writes more, but all of the main like different regions and realms and monarchies that we see from, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of all of them, which in only 800 pages is quite well done. This is definitely a really beautifully written slow burner. I found for myself, at least with Samantha Shannon's writing, it is quite slow for me. It can take a little bit of time for me to get into it, and nothing is particularly fast paced, but I do adore them. I tend to like blasting through books, so I can be put off a little bit at the beginning of these sorts of books with how slow they are, but I've given all of them 5 stars so far. All 3 books I've read from Samantha Shannon, I've given 5 stars. So I need to just suck it up and realise that I like her writing. But it is a slower style of writing, and it's absolutely beautiful. Surprisingly, despite the fact that this took me technically over a year to read, although I didn't read most of it until the 1 week in which I read it, by the time I reached the end of it, I wanted more. I was annoyed that it was finishing. I was like, there aren't enough pages to wrap this up. I need more writing. I need to learn more about this world. And I didn't expect that from an 800-page book. I thought that the end would be a relief, that the end would be a culmination of everything, and I would be happy to be leaving this world behind, and I'm not. This is another book that really stuck with me for a long while after I finished reading it, and I really hope that Samantha Shannon puts out more stuff within this world. I know that this is a standalone, but I can live in hope. So that is my review for The Priory of the Orange Tree. Is anyone else trying to read this? Because it took me like a year. So I'm not judging if it took you longer than me, because it's a big book. But is anyone else trying to read this? Has anyone else read it? Let me know what you thought, because this is just absolutely gorgeous. I loved it so, so, so much. And if I didn't say already, 5 stars, obviously. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Kind of rethinking my internal bias? I don't know. Moving on.